next storyteller, of course, is Jared. Jared Wall is a Wardandi Bibbulmun cross-genre artist engaged in various art forms, primarily as a singer-songwriter and producer under the name of Boox Kid. He is also a general manager in Aboriginal services with Anglicare WA and has a background quite well steeped in social services and youth justice. You're going to get at least 2, 3 or 4 for the price of one here because the man's very, very talented and I've known him for a while. Please, Jared.
And that's really great. Sorry. Thanks.
Cool. All good. Thanks everyone. I kind of want to start by acknowledging that this referendum is actually pretty taxing and exhausting, and particularly for mob. So to be sharing stories, it's some pretty personal ones as well. It's commendable that, you know, that mob do want to do this. And I say mob, and I mean that collectively, everyone here today. But particularly for Aboriginal people. And that's a sad thing, I guess, because the referendum didn't actually need to be that way. It didn't need to be exhausting. But it has turned out like that. So, my name is Jared Wall, but my family name is Hill. That's the Aboriginal side of my family. And we're from the Wardandi Bibbulmun area of the southwest of WA, which is like Bunbury, Bustleton. Mum was born down in Collie. I was born up in Wajak country. I live in Wayup near Freo. But, yeah, like my brother said, I've worked in different fields. I spent 15 years working for youth justice, now work for Anglicare WA, but I've also, throughout that whole time, been a performer, been an artist, and been singing, playing in different realms in my own original music, and then with WA Opera as well. And my dad gave me my first guitar when I was 8 years old. And that's kind of where I got my love of music. And I had an older brother who used to play in an a cappella R&B group back in the 90s. And if anyone's from Queensland, they were called Aim for More. It was literally Aim for More. But they were pretty big. They had the moves and all. But so that's kind of where I had my love for music, and Mum, yeah, I guess I come from a family that's we've always wanted to achieve things through adversity, and I mention that because it will come important later in my story. But my mum has worked numerous years lecturing in universities. She has a degree in what she tells me is psychology. And she told me the other day, I can't remember the whole name now. I'll have to go, she'll kill me for that. And then my brother's an associate professor at Curtin University. My sister curates the Aboriginal Arts collection at the WA Gallery. But yeah, so this story probably starts back though before I was born. It starts back prior to 1967, and if anyone knows why that's an important date, I think you all do. And the reason is because that's when Aboriginal people were actually started to be counted. But my story starts before that. So that's when Mum was born, 1953. So Mum, born in Collie. When they were about 5, she and her siblings, they all lived up in Point Sampson near Rudeberg. And my pop, Herbert Hill, he was conscripted to go to war. At a time when he couldn't actually be counted. So when he came back from fighting, he couldn't share a drink with his comrades, couldn't go to the local bars. He didn't have the same rights. But probably one of the saddest things that happened, and this is not an uncommon story for Mob, but he came home and the kids were gone. They'd been stolen. They were taken by welfare, by police, to Roban lockup, then down to Perth, to the receiving home in Mount Lawley. If anyone knows, it was called the Depot on the corner of Walcott Street in Mount Lawley. It exists now as a youth justice centre, believe it or not. And you think to yourself, how therapeutic is that? But she then went to Sister Kate's, and she stayed there for a number of years. Sister Kate's is the home that was in Queen's Park. It's still there. And they stayed there for a number of years. Mum went to one family, the sisters to another family, and the brother stayed there until he was a teenager. And there was lots of abuse and different things that went on. But throughout that time, they always taught us values, and we always wanted to, well, Mum always had a desire for us to achieve, and she didn't want to see those things happen to us. So then we kind of grew up. We went to Queensland. When I was born here, but I went to Queensland and spent about 10 years living over there because my dad was going into the army. And I want to give you one particular moment from that time over there, because it's kind of a defining moment. We lived in a little suburb called Silkstone, which is in Ipswich in the 90s. And I was this little black fella that'd walk up to the local shops in my bare feet, and I'd wander up there, and I'd go up to the shop attendant. There was a fish and chip shop there, so I'd go to this little fish and chip shop. I'd walk up, I'd say, I just want $2 worth of chips, and I had the money, and I'd give the money to the attendant, and then they'd give me the change back. But the attendant would never give it to me in my hand. She'd never hand it to me. He was always slap down on the bench, take 2 steps back, because you couldn't dare touch me. So that person, they had red hair. You might know them. Their name was Pauline Hanson. So this is just prior to when Pauline was going into politics. And here I am, this little, 8-year-old young fella who just experienced his first little outright bit of racism. I was 8. What the hell did I do? I was buying chips. But I bring that up because it wasn't the first experience. It wasn't the only experience, rather. And it isn't uncommon for Aboriginal people. But it was defining because it did show me that there's a lot of injustice for not a lot of reason. And what kind of happened, I guess, from there on is I always watched Mum working hard in her professions, full mob, wanting to achieve for Mum. She worked for Queensland Police back when we were over there in a time when it wasn't very nice to work for the police. And she then worked in mental health. She's taught in universities and all sorts of things. And then one day, I was working in bars. I think I was about like 21, and I've always done music and different things, but I also wanted to do other things. I studied music. I went to uni and did sports science for a year. I have no idea why I did that. I think I thought, oh yeah, I'm good at sport. That makes sense. I'll do that. But then Mum kind of pushed me into this, but I was very agreeable back then. She made me do the public service tests. So I was like, oh yeah, give it a go. And then gave it a go, and I got my first placement working for the Department of Justice for a place called Kalara Youth Support Service. And I worked as a clerical. And then I worked up in admin. And then I went on to do roles as in a youth justice officer, where I'd supervise young kids on court orders. And then I'd go on to work in statutory settings, diversionary settings. I worked in Bagsy Hill, which I'm sure you all have heard of. And I spent 15 years working in the department, and largely I really enjoyed those years because I loved the kids that I worked with. Like the Uluru Statement says, these are really good kids. We are not innately criminal. And I wanted to achieve the best I could for my mom. And throughout this time, I always did music, and I always sang, I always performed, and I always loved doing that and being a role model in this realm because it's where I felt truly happy as well. So I had this balance that was difficult, and I went through lots of highs and lows. I'd always come from doing shows on a complete high, and then I'd come back to a bit of a low because I'd see some of the despair and injustice from systems that were built. And then it kind of became pretty clear after 15 years that when people say the systems are broken, they're actually not broken. The systems are not broken. The systems were never built for us to achieve. They were designed that way. So 15 years went on, and the last 2 years I was managing a youth bail centre and a team that worked in the children's court. And it was the first time in the last 2 years of my roles within justice where I felt really, really challenged, both morally and by the work that I was doing. And if anyone knows legislation and in government, the Bail Act in particular, it's incredibly archaic. A document that was written in 1984 has had minimal adjustments since that time. I found myself working a bit of an uphill battle. And I felt in the first time in years that I was actually contributing to the problem. So I felt like I was directly impacting kids going into detention, which for me was heartbreaking, because the last thing I wanted to see was mob in custody. So coupled with that is that in the last 2 years, from 2021, I got an amazing opportunity. I've always performed, like I said, but an opportunity came up where I got a chance to audition for an opera. And there was an opera called Wardandi Bibbulmun, which in Nyungar language means the magpie and the crow. So it was an opera written by Arnie Gina Williams and Guy Gauss. And I mention this because what I was experiencing at the time in my conflict, and then also going into this audition, was incredibly important for this story. Because I went into this audition thinking, oh hell yeah, it's just another gig, I'll be right. But then I auditioned and I got the part of Wardandi, which is a crow. And I remember going into rehearsals with Auntie Gina, and we had the first couple of rehearsals with the WA Youth Orchestra. And if you've ever heard an orchestra live right in front of you, it's amazing. So here I was, about to sing the first take of what was my aria in the opera called Nyungar, which means wicked heart. So I sang this, and in this first rehearsal with Auntie Gina, what originally was just another gig, I thought, became something so much more. I was speaking my language. I was learning my culture all over again. Mum used to teach me culture when I was young, and I used to do dances when I was young back in Queensland. I got taught how to make soap again, but I hadn't done that kind of stuff in a long time. So to come back full circle and to engage in something so enriching was the most amazing experience like I've had ever. And that was my turning point, I guess. I think I realized how important culture is and how important language is, and what I was doing and how important it was for my people, but also for non-Aboriginal people too. So when we did the opera, we did 5 shows at His Majesty's Theatre, and we also did regional touring around the state for the next 2 years. And each place that we played at, each town, there was a bana, which is called a children's choir. And we had a children's choir which consisted of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal kids, mostly non-Aboriginal kids. So what was an amazing experience for myself, learning language, I also got to see all these young Kulingers, these children, learning language as well, non-Aboriginal kids, which to me is pretty damn important and pretty amazing. Because I think of things like the curriculum these days, and I think of how the voice can potentially be a mechanism for change. And I think about legislation and how it can change. And I think about, okay, the voice is something that can make a real difference. Because I think about how great would it be if we're in schools and part of the curriculum is, okay, we're going to be going into new language sessions now, and how enriching that would be. So for me, I made a conscious decision December last year. I resigned from Department of Justice and I started working with Anglicare, where I now work 4 days a week in a role where I'm not just focusing on offending, I'm focusing on all the hope and aspirations of my people and true self-determination. And they really foster me and what I do as a musician as well. Because I know how important it is, I know how important the culture is and the music is to me. So, for me, that was my turning point. And it was great to be able to share language. So, what I want to give to you guys is a message of hope, because I truly see the voice as something that is hopeful. I think about language and how inspiring it can be. And I want to share with you a song because I truly feel that Aboriginal people deserve their rightful place in this country. And if you've read the Uluru Statement, our culture is a gift to this country. And we are the strength of this country. So I hope you enjoy this. Kura kura, ngalakwabada, ngarin kochil karajin, nolaknan, kwarangan ba, kalikulngan korda. Yengan, you are wawak, bekada jinba jinan, kurangala, kaban wabin, yengala bakajan. Kainuno bul kwabidang ni janga jel jinani Kainuno bul kwabidang ni janga jel jinani Yunam korwa Kura kura Ngaladanju Kid Dabakan Kulin Warakidla Ngija Kulin Warakondam You are cool Winjingan Kwarangan ba Winji bawud Kolin Bawu Kolin Bobo Gaja Banyonde Kayaku Kainuno Ula kwabidang Ijanga jel jinani Kainuno Ula kwabidang Ijanga jel jinani Nunang korwara Nunang korwara Nunang korwara Galak you are cottage Galak
Thank you.